Thank you. Let me begin by thanking the people without whom this event would not be possible. Granite State and Vermont PNHP, the Southern New Hampshire DSA, the Medicare for All New Hampshire Facebook group, Rights and Democracy, and the March for Medicare for All national movement. My name is Jonah Wheeler. I'm a community organizer in Peterborough and a member of Rights and Democracy. Before we get started, I want to mention a couple of upcoming events that can keep you or bring you into being connected to the campaign here in the state for Medicare for All. Rights and Democracy and Be a Hero Home and Community-Based Services campaign has a kickoff call Wednesday, August 4th at 6:30 with Adi Barkin, and the RAD Healthcare Justice Team has a healthcare listening session August 18th at 6 o'clock over Zoom. We have the canvassers here in the crowd with yellow jackets that can give you more information on how to attend these meetings, and they also have the chant sheets for when we're marching later today. So why are we here? We're here because a for-profit con of a system is actively and knowingly letting the working class get sicker than need be and die for the benefit of no one but the shareholders. Revenues for Anthem rose 15% last year to $29 billion. It is truly hard to fathom the amount of money that is, and yet, do we see the safety net hospital crisis being addressed? Or any material benefit to the system other than the profit to the shareholders? No. We see and have seen a sharp decline in the quality of care provided and the resources necessary to provide that care. Like the safety net hospitals, without whom people in low-income communities, largely non-white communities, would perish. The insidious nature of the system is fed by our common, unspoken understanding that we are all alone together, drowning in an ocean of greed. People from every walk of life are having their humanity stripped from them, piece by piece, finding themselves feeling like no one. It's hard to fight for someone else when you yourself don't feel like somebody. It's when we break the mental barrier, that moral lag keeping us from imagining a better world, that a better world will come to light. Through creating spaces like these, through showing up and being consistent with our principles, we can accelerate the arc of the moral universe. The task is never easy, our opposition is great, and the soul of the working class has been beaten down even greater, but it is necessary to do. As the leaders elected to do something capitulate to this system and gaslight us into thinking that everything that's going on is justifiable, we must take power into our own hands, realizing that we create the profits for them. We drive the system and have the utmost power to stop it. Those in power currently know better than us that we are the supermajority. They spend billions trying to divide us, but at the end of the day, we all have a healthcare story. We all see our infrastructure crumbling. We all saw corporate America get bailed out for gambling twice in a decade. We all see and know people who have lost everything for no reason other than they had a medical emergency. We all see our government supporting siege warfare abroad, engaging and bombing the poorest country on the planet, destabilizing countries which held together entire regions with trillions of our dollars over the last 40 years. All again for profit and control. Our people are blinded by the media and the government to accept this unholy fact that our government should spend trillions on war but peanuts on us, claiming a free market has their best interests at heart when it comes to their health care, or tying said health care to employment, while two parties bicker and fight about the wedge issues at our expense. It's far past time to become uncomfortable with this system of materialism, war, and poverty, to recognize how unacceptable this situation is. We have to ask ourselves, as people who claim to care, what are we willing to do as the people with the best opportunity out of anyone in the world to overturn this system, which is destroying this ever-beautiful planet and the cultures and habitats within? Truly, what are we willing to do? Wait every 4 years to put our faith in those same leaders who have taken money from these people? People are being killed, and they are screaming at us to do something. Eventually, we must realize that we cannot live in fear of what will happen. We must simply act for the soul of the nation, for the soul of humanity. We fight not because we think we have the best policy, know all the answers, or even because we think we will win. We fight because it is right. The courage to overturn a system which has marked an era of hate, greed, and exploitation in human history lives within all of us. As we hear the stories, testimonies, and speeches today, let them be the spark that starts the fire within your soul to do what is necessary to take on the oligopoly that is corporate America once and for all, and usher in a world of love, compassion, justice, and equity for every human being, so that they may reach their full God-given potential. There are people we have today who can better articulate that than I, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ken Dolkart of Granite State PNHP, a co-host of this event today, and wonderful partner with some of our work, especially on Medicare for All resolutions. Ken has recently passed a resolution in Keene where he spoke about his experiences, and Ken, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jonah. And thanks to everybody who came out on this beautiful New Hampshire day. Wow. So, again, this is talking in this era is sort of like talking in the middle of a Twilight Zone episode with the world of politics as it is, but we'll leave that aside because this is a non-political issue. Sorry? I could shout. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Well, so my name's Ken Dolkart. I'm a primary care doctor. I've been practicing in New Hampshire and recently Vermont now these past 4 decades, 40 years. And I have genuinely had a privilege taking care of my patients with truly remarkable advances in science and medicine, and which has been appreciated by all of us. However, all too often, the care that we doctors provide is limited not by our skill set, but by what insurance a patient can afford, or if they can afford it at all. Our care is limited by unaddressed social determinants of health, which have no purchase in our current medical industrial complex. The care for our patients suffers when people can't afford the absurd costs of drugs for their ailments, or they have to dodge through the barriers put up by an insurance bureaucracy that's dedicated to profit, not to their patients. So this is a reality. As Jonah mentioned, we've all seen our insurance premiums skyrocket. We've all watched this new phenomenon called deductibles, such that we have to spend $5,000 a year before we can get a penny of health insurance. Meanwhile, the stock prices on Wall Street, CEO salaries are exploding, and our well-funded healthcare lobbyists in Washington are running amok. So what does this translate to us, the folks who are here out on this nice day? You all have your own healthcare stories, and I've seen really disasters and nightmares. I had a patient who had a breast lump who could not afford bringing her care into a physician. She deferred it so she could take care of her patient, take care of her family, and a year later she had stage 4 breast cancer. Unforgivable in any country, in any place on earth. Recently, I cared for an employed person. She was fully employed, had no health insurance through her employer. She had put up with symptoms of a tumor that was filling her abdomen, an ovarian tumor, hoping that her symptoms would go away tomorrow, but they didn't. She was worried that she couldn't make ends meet because she had no health insurance. These are realities in this day and age in the 21st century. It's pretty wild. Even after expansion of Medicaid, which has been a good thing for our patients. So over the past decade, it's not unique to New Hampshire, unpaid medical bills are now the largest source of unpaid debt in the U.S., greater than student debt, which you hear a lot about. 30% of fundraising on GoFundMe is from medical debt. This is unforgivable and unheard of in other places on earth. The disparities, oh, and by the way, that medical debt is 5 times greater in the zip codes that have the poorest neighborhoods compared to the wealthiest neighborhoods. So these disparities between the haves and have-nots are worsening. And we could illustrate that with life expectancy, maternal mortality, infant mortality. But basically it's underlined by the death from COVID among Black and Latinx Americans. So what do we make of all this? Well, we've had an experiment. 35 years, we've had an experiment of deregulating health insurance. The free market, well, which healthcare never is, conquers all. And the conclusion of this experiment is incontestable. It's failed. This experiment fails to prevent exploding insurance premiums. It's failed to prevent absurd deductibles. It's failed to prevent the inflated American prices for procedures, drugs, and medical devices. This immoral, misguided experiment continues to fail to provide any insurance for 30 million Americans. What's happening currently? Negotiations behind closed doors between insurers and large hospital systems, which results, by the way, in the squeezing and closure of essential rural and community-based hospitals. On the other hand, national legislation prevents negotiation between Medicare and the big pharma. That's our legislation in progress. Yet there's insufficient legislation to counter rampant collusion and antitrust actions in big pharma. So there's something called pay for delay, where the brand name company pays off the generic not to manufacture the competing drug. This happens on a daily basis. It's antitrust, yet you don't hear it being attacked by the agencies in charge. So there's also price fixing among drug manufacturers and by generic manufacturers. So by any definition, what's going on in the world of pharmaceuticals is a drug cartel, but not the one that you've heard of. So and by the way, don't please get me started about pharmacy benefit managers and rebates and all that insanity. So in essence, here in America, we pay twice the cost for health care compared to any other nation on earth. There's an interesting phenomena. In the U.S., when we suddenly turn 65, our otherwise poor medical outcomes dramatically improve. And guess what? Our care becomes superior to that of other nations. There's something called death due to care that's amenable to medical intervention. We trail the world in that. We don't provide preventive care. We don't provide good care for diabetes for folks who don't have the means. Once you turn 65, all of a sudden, those medical problems, your chronic illness, your chronic disease is under excellent care. And we exceed other countries. We've got the means to do so. What's magic about age 65? Well, you guys know. So the traditional Medicare that we celebrate, by the way, today, has kept waste down most effectively with minimal overhead. It's readily accepted by physicians and it has a minimal hassle factor for patients and care providers. Traditional Medicare has a 50-year track record of providing highly efficient care and high-quality care for fellow Americans, often those with the most demanding medical needs, dialysis and serious illness. It's so marvelous to see you all out here today. With your efforts, Medicare can be improved and expanded to cover dental care, hearing and vision services, as well as long-term care. Most important, with your efforts, it ain't going to come from us as doctors, but with your efforts, Medicare must be expanded to cover all Americans. It'll happen when we demand that our representatives ignore the moneyed influence of the medical industrial lobbies and respond to the needs of their constituents, us and you. So, you deserve a medical system that's automatically available, readily accessible, high quality, and affordable. And our lives will be better and longer and care less costly as Medicare becomes available to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. I just want to mention Melissa's doing a great job with a, I don't know, I just saw her, and there she is. She's in the back. Melissa's doing a great job getting names for the petition. So if you haven't signed the petition, I urge you to sign it. Next up, we have Delaney, who is a medical student in her second year at Dartmouth. She wants to serve underprivileged communities. Delaney.
Hello, as was just said, can you guys hear me okay? No? Can you hear me better? Yes? Okay. Okay, so I'm Delaney. I'm entering my second year of medical school in 2 weeks at Dartmouth. And ever since I started volunteering with underserved populations, I realized that those are the people that I want to serve in the future. And most of those people... Sorry. Okay. So this patient population has a variety of factors going against them, and our current healthcare system contributes to some of these issues that they are facing. And we don't need to have that as one of the other things to add to their plate. Our healthcare system contributes to significant health disparities that we see in this country. And for example, Americans in poverty receive less care and less quality care than those who are not below the poverty line. For people who qualify for Medicaid, not all healthcare providers will accept Medicaid, so that it makes them search for a provider, and they might not have transportation to get to these other places. They have so many other things going on in their life. You shouldn't have to be worrying about, how do I find a doctor that can treat me? So then this leads to people not getting preventative care and then ending up in the emergency room when things really go bad because they haven't seen anyone. And then this is much more expensive than just going to see a doctor regularly and getting medication for any possible chronic illness that comes up rather than reading it at the end. There's also a dichotomy that some people face when they have to balance possibly making more money and then not qualifying for Medicaid anymore, and then not being able to afford other health insurances if it's not provided through their employer, or if they can't even afford it from an employer. Medicare for all would mean all Americans would have access to the care that they need, regardless of their income or background. And many patients who do not have access or struggle to receive care do not go for regular preventative visits, like I said. So with people not going to the emergency department as often because they're getting preventative care, they're going to be getting medications that they need, which will help them live longer, help them be more better in their work. They can work for longer times, possibly help us there. Also, they can lower costs because we're not seeing people in the emergency department when you need so much more care than just maybe taking one pill a day. Also, many patients do not have the time, ability, resources to call insurance companies when they are trying to figure out their care, or to call for different medical facilities to try to figure out if they can see them. And this also is something that providers have to deal with as well. So this leads to burnout in healthcare providers, and the people that are taking care of the underserved population are already taking care of so many people and having so much on their plate that this just adds to that and makes it so people don't want to treat these patients. So there's so much administrative work that providers must undertake for their care, to care for their patients. Sometimes if a patient comes in and a provider knows exactly what they need to treat them, they might not be able to because insurance says, actually, we think that's different, even though they're not actually the doctor that's seen the patient. Some people need prior authorizations, or there's just hoops for them to jump through before they can complete a patient's care. And in that time period, someone might not be able to come back. They might not have transportation, or they might just be lost to follow-up and then never get the care that they need. Patients need providers who are able to actually treat them and have time to effectively get to know their patients and their health issues that they come with. And I hope during my professional lifetime that we are able to move the needle to get closer to a universal system of healthcare. Medicare for all would be amazing. Without it, health disparities will continue to increase, as well as provider burnout. Both patients and providers need Medicare for all for our healthcare to improve. Thank you.
Next up is Matt. He's a school teacher for special education children in Claremont who will be speaking about other nations' approaches to healthcare.
All right. I have a very loud voice, so I hope that everybody can hear me. All right. My name is Matthew Bean. I'm from Claremont, New Hampshire, about an hour away from there. Here, in addition to working with special ed students, where I'm actually a paraprofessional right now, I'm working on my degree. Just got my associate's degree, working on my bachelor's. So So I work in various roles in that community. I also do in-home support for families, and I coach football and unified track. Today, I'm here to talk about healthcare. It is my strong belief that healthcare should be viewed as a human right, and care should be free at point of service. Period. I've heard endless healthcare horror stories from people both in my work. I've even had football players tell me, "Hey coach, I don't know if I can play football. What if I break my leg? I don't have health insurance." And I've heard a lot of stories through my time as an activist as well, campaigning for Bernie Sanders both times he ran. And the thing that strikes me is that these stories, they're not from people like going through a surgery or a medical procedure. They're the bills and the debt that they have when they get out of that already traumatic situation going through a surgery. There are people, medical bills that have cost thousands of dollars for surgeries, hundreds of dollars for procedures like blood work, and for getting an EKG, we're talking a 5-minute procedure, and you get a bill for hundreds of dollars in the mail. How absurd is that? I have also had experiences of people not going to the doctor when they should have, not getting prescription medication that they need to survive, whether it be psychological or physical, both. We knowingly traumatize people in America, knowingly, or inhibit their ability to be able to achieve their dreams for the profits of health, for the profits of insurance companies. Living in a society where you do not have to worry about paying medical bills or going to debt simply because you got sick is not a pipe dream. I've done 7 different essays in college about healthcare for all and what goes on in the rest of the developed world. The extraordinary part is that we pay double per capita what countries that provide universal health care do. So it's still not good if you're looking at a fiscal conservative point of view. You're still wasting money. Countries like Canada, Germany, Denmark, Switzerland, Australia, I can keep going, you guys know. They all have universal health care there. The most traumatic part about going to the hospital in those countries is the procedure you undertake, not the bill. This is the reality in these systems. No system is going to be perfect. A utopia does not exist. But let me tell you, a Medicare for all system achieves the goal of guaranteeing health care as a human right. It also, if you really think about it, we already have this type of structures placed in our societies. Police departments, fire departments, public schools. All we're saying is we add healthcare to those structures. It's really not that radical of a thing. At the end of the day, a Medicare for all system will end traumatizing people at the doctor's office and get them the help that they need and not set their lives back because they got sick. Thank you.
Healthcare is a public good. That's right. That's right. Pretty gangster system we have going on. Pretty gangster system we have going on. Next up, we have Anthony Kaplan from Merrimack County, who is a state rep. Anthony, take it away. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? I hope you can hear me. My name is Tony Kaplan. I'm a first-term state rep from Henniker. And shout out to my other state reps. And before that, I was a public school teacher for many years. And one of the reasons I got into public school teaching is the quote-unquote good health care coverage. And it was good. I appreciate it. I was happy for it. But I just want to tell you that every year there was more and more money out of my paycheck for less and less health care coverage. Yeah. And every year it was a huge source of friction at town meetings when people would say, "Why are we paying so much for education? What's the story here? What is it? What are the teachers doing?" And I'd say it's not the teachers, it's the privatized health care system with the spiraling costs that impact every aspect of our lives. You know, I lived in England for a few years in the 90s, And I was always so appreciative of the healthcare coverage I got there. Don't let anybody tell you that the public healthcare systems are inferior. They're not. Routine care, emergency care, I experienced all of it. It was excellent. And it was free. I have a healthcare nightmare story of my own. It's bland compared to some. I mean, even in my own family, there are worse stories, but I'm going to tell it anyway. I was doing a house project, a building project a few years ago. I was painting, and I was barefoot up on a ladder. Don't ever do that. And I stepped off the ladder and stepped on a piece of wood and got a big splinter at the bottom of my foot. So, ow. So I thought, well, I'll go to the emergency room because the pain was bad. I went to the emergency room, and they poked around with a needle. Okay, it was a big, long needle, bottom of my foot for a while, and then they said, no, we can't get it out. Go home and soak your foot. So I did. A few weeks later, I got the bill, a couple $100 copay, which I thought, okay, but I flipped the page over and looked at the bottom. Total cost of the procedure, several $1,000s for poking around in my foot for literally half an hour with, okay, maybe a long needle. But that's when I knew that our healthcare system is broken and it's keeping us broke. And that's how the insurance companies are making their obscene profits. They just pass on these profligate charges to their pool of clients, which is us, the public, and we're getting fleeced, none the wiser. So, that's the system that we have. And it's crazy. People have mentioned here that we pay twice as much per capita total health care as other countries. And that's not even counting the research or infrastructure. That's just doctors and hospitals and medicine. But what's even crazier is if you look at what the governments spend across the board, it's pretty level. The US government is spending pretty much the same as the UK government, Germany, Italy, Australia, all these other countries. The governments spend about the same. The difference is the private spending. Private per capita spending in the United States is about $4,000 average we spend individually on healthcare. Does that sound about right? Yeah. You know what they spend in Canada? Just a little bit to the north, $800 per person. We are spending 5 times the amount that the average Canadian spends on healthcare. You look across the pond, the Scandinavians spend less than $100 per person on healthcare. We're spending 40 times what the average Scandinavian spends on healthcare. That's crazy.
And not getting the help.
Then you got to ask, what are we getting in return? The argument is, yeah, we get better health care, but as we know, I'm preaching to the choir here, we have much worse health care outcomes. We have the lowest life expectancy in the industrialized world. We have the highest chronic disease burdens. We have the highest suicide rate. We have twice the obesity rate. Our health care outcomes per dollar spent are way, way worse than any other industrialized country. So, how did we get here? You got to ask yourself, what is the story? It's a long, complicated story, but you can only conclude that the American people are the most brainwashed, exploited, colonized people on the planet, when our very healthcare, or lack of healthcare, is the source of such profits for the corporate elites. And we just take it. We just take it. Why? I don't know, because America or something, I guess. The resistance to facts, the resistance to progress, the resistance to just basic good stuff for all of us, like healthcare, is just incomprehensible. It doesn't make any sense. They say that we're the richest country in the world, and it's true. We are the richest country in the history of civilization, but we fail at the most basic task, and that's taking care of our own people. While the privatized healthcare corporations post record profits year after year, and our healthcare outcomes just get worse. But we're here to say that we're not ready to accept that. We're not ready to accept a system that sacrifices our health and our wealth for the benefit of a privileged few. That's just crazy. Why would we? It's crazy. They say the Republicans are a cult of personality. Have you heard that? They've become a cult of personality under Trump. Well, I want to tell you, they were a cult of ideology long before Trump. And the ideology of the right is that it's right for the rich to get richer, and it's right for the masses to struggle. So we get rugged individualism for all of us. It's good for us to suffer. So it's okay we don't have good health care. It's right. We don't need health care because we're from New Hampshire. We never get sick, right? Yeah, it's a widespread belief system that this ideology is responsible for. But we're here to say that we don't think it's right, and we don't think it's even feasible, because we have the example of healthcare systems around the world that aren't profit-driven and that do a better job of taking care of the health outcomes for the people they're intended to serve, i.e. the public. So we are not going to settle for anything less than Medicare for all. That's the thing that makes sense for us, because it's an equitable system, and why would we accept anything else? So stay strong, stay committed, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and Medicare for all, baby, that's the way to go, and we will not accept anything else. Have a great rest of the weekend.
Thank you. Next up, we have Maria Perez, who is a phenomenal advocate for justice in the State House. State Representative Maria Perez.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria Perez. I'm an elected official. Oh, thank you. I'm an elected official. I'm one of the state representatives in Milford, New Hampshire. I'm one of the new chairwomen for the Latino caucus in New Hampshire as well. Yes, representing 40,000 Latinos in New Hampshire. Yes, we do have 40,000 Latinos in New Hampshire. And the other hat that I wear is I'm a lead organizer with One Fair Wage. We're trying to end the sub-minimum wage in New Hampshire. Yes. But today I'm here as a normal human being to share my story. The story of many people that look like me, that have been called, so-called, essential workers during this pandemic. Many of them lost their job. Lost not just a job, but they lost their lives. How many times that we have to see families losing a loved one because they can't afford insurance? How many times families like mine has to decide either to save their green card and come to be a U.S. citizen and not be able to apply for Medicaid when someone has breast cancer and you know that the breast cancer is going to take the life away. My mother-in-law was diagnosed with breast cancer 3 years ago. She is one of them who has a green card. She can't apply for Medicaid because if she applies for Medicaid, she will lose her green card and she's not going to be able to have a citizenship. How many more families like mine, they have to go through this? How many times my family, I'm a state representative who worked 40 hours plus as a state representative. I have a full-time job as an organizer with One Fair Wage. I have a part-time job and many other things that I have to do just to survive. How many more families like mine has to go through everything that I'm going through and my family has to go through just to enable to survive? I have chronic Lyme disease right now. To be honest, I have days that I'm tired, I feel very sick, but I cannot afford it to put myself down in a bed and say, I can't get up. I have to push myself to get up and keep going, not just because of the people in my community, but because my own family can't afford it for me to stay in bed sick. How many stories did we have to hear? How many times our people has to go through this? I'm here to tell you that I've been fighting and I will continue my fight. Not just because of my family, but many families like mine and many people, so-called essential workers, that deserve to have one healthcare and healthcare for all. We can't afford it to continue this way. We have to do what we can. And I will ask you, please support and push our senators and push our government to say yes to one medical for all. Thank you so much, everyone.
Next, we have Jimmy Coutreau, who has cerebral palsy, and will be talking about his experience and the experience of his peers in the healthcare system, or lack thereof.
So, before I read this, I'm very emotional listening to everybody speak. And just, you're all here because we all support Medicare for all, and we're all angry about the current state of our healthcare system. And I just have a message for those of you who aren't upset about our healthcare system. You're doing fine. The healthcare system is working for you because you can afford it. But there's millions of Americans across this country who can't afford it or don't have any healthcare. So I'm gonna talk about what it's like to have a disability and have Medicare and Medicaid, because I think it's important for people to understand why not having to pay thousands of dollars a month or tens of thousands of dollars a year and needing to decide whether you're going to pay your health care or groceries or rent or whatever it is. So just listen to what I have to say. Before I begin, I just want to thank Savage Joy, who I follow on Twitter, for reaching out to me. She's worked tirelessly, and I just want to thank her for reaching out to me. It's not every day that people with disabilities get to have a voice, and when she reached out to Heather, and Heather reached out to me, we chatted for about an hour, and I basically opened up to her about my entire life story, and so I want to thank her, everyone for giving me the opportunity to speak today. So, yes, I was born with cerebral palsy. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a neurological disorder that affects my muscle tone, my movement, and my posture. There's different types of cerebral palsy, which you all can look up, but basically mine it's called spastic diplegia, which occurs in two limbs. So it could occur in your arms, your legs. It can occur on one side or the other. For me, it's just my legs. There's treatment, but there's no cure. In 1998, I had a surgery done on both of my legs to correct the way I was walking. Just as an example, my feet would turn inward, and so I'd basically be walking essentially cross-legged. It made it very difficult to walk. When I was younger, I used a walker and had to do physical therapy, and then eventually I graduated to crutches. So later that year, and that was done in Concord. Later that year, I was referred to Boston Children's Hospital, their neurosurgery department, about a breakthrough in new technology to treat cerebral palsy. I was put on a trial for baclofen medication. It helps treat spasticity of my condition, so it helps me walk better because my legs are tight most of the time. The way they do it, the pump is surgically put right over here, and then there's a catheter that goes directly into my spine to deliver the medication. Life hasn't always been easy. You obviously saw how I was getting up out of the chair and how difficult it was to walk. But what you don't really see is the mental illness, and that's one thing that's not talked about enough in this country is, especially for people with physical conditions, there's mental illness that goes along with it. I grew up very depressed. Kids are nice, but they also can be mean. I was made fun of, and at some point you get sick and tired of being made fun of, and you start physically fighting people because no one's listening to you. And I did get into a physical altercation, but really all it took was someone to just push me down, and I lost my balance, fell on the ground. I lost my balance, but I think I earned a lot of respect because it taught people yeah, I'm gonna fall down, but I'm gonna get back up. Woo! so many in my position would have taken the easy way out, but I'm here to tell everyone, your pain is valid. Your experiences are valid, your struggles are valid. It doesn't make it right what people, what bullies are allowed to get away with. I've heard countless stories over the last year, especially in Nashua, where I'm from, where school administrators are just not doing anything to put an end to it, and I just think that's wrong. There's no justification for bullying. It doesn't build character, despite what people might say. The only way to deal with bullying is to understand that they don't know what you have to go through, and the best thing you can do is just to talk to people and educate them. So that's what I did, and as I was doing this, I gained a lot of respect from people of all different backgrounds, and I'm still doing this today because I work retail, and when you work retail, you deal with all different kinds of people. And I've been at my job for 7 years, and I've only had 2 experiences in those 7 years where I've had someone come up to me and say, "Why were you even hired? You're disabled." Now that sounds ridiculous to you, but that's kind of a reality of what I'm dealing with. I lost my So why am I here today advocating for Medicare for all, even though I have Medicare, Medicaid, and I'm on Social Security? Well, by the way, I'm gonna get into the Social Security thing a little bit later, but I recognize that our for-profit health care system just doesn't work. It doesn't work when those of you have to pay thousands of dollars out of pocket, like I mentioned, before your insurance will cover anything, and then you still end up getting denied care, burying you in even more debt. It doesn't work when you have to pay hundreds of dollars for life-saving medication. Like, I never really mean to listen to people when they're at the pharmacy, because I go to the pharmacy and I virtually pay nothing for my medication because it's covered. But it's disgusting when you have to hear that someone has to pay a $400 copay for just one medication. Like, why is it that we as Americans are asked to participate in capitalism, but our representatives in Congress are allowed to have their health care paid by our taxes? So I would like to see how they would live for just even 1 year, working 60 to 70 hours a week that I hear a lot of my friends have to work, working between 2 part-time jobs or a part-time and a full-time, on the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. And I would just like to see exactly how much money they're left with after that year, after their medical bills are paid for, after their rent is paid for, after their car payments are paid for. Just strip them of their entire wealth and see how well they do, because I bet you that they would increase the minimum wage to not $15 an hour, but it really should be $25 an hour, because 10 years from now, 5 to 10 years from now, $15 is going to be irrelevant. Senator Hassan comes into mind because she has a son with cerebral palsy, and she talks about him a lot, and he's her inspiration for wanting to get involved in politics. And I just saw that she shared something on Facebook recently about about something that happened in the Olympics, the Paralympics, where they couldn't hire enough assistants because of the COVID crisis. And I just think that is unfair as a disabled person, but as someone who used to do Special Olympics. Obviously, I was upset a few years ago under the Trump presidency when he was talking about, when there was talk about the fiscal budget, and Special Olympics cut their funding, or Special Olympics got their funding cut. I contacted all of my representatives, and they all basically said, well, they did something about it, so we don't need to talk about it. We don't need to talk about it? Like, oh, because he made an oopsie, we don't need to just call it out for what it is? Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. Like, I talk about ableism because that is very ableist when you can just say, oh, I made a mistake, I didn't know what was in my budget. And I don't believe people when they say they don't know what is in the budget. He knew what was in the budget and he did nothing about it. The need for Medicare for all is simple. When people are struggling to pay bills, they can't contribute to the economy. When 600,000 people died between March 2020 and March 2021 because the president doesn't take a pandemic seriously and Congress refused to send out monthly checks and authorize Medicare to pay for medical bills for those that have lost their job and in turn their health insurance, we're not doing well. When the rich made $600 billion during the pandemic but didn't give any of it back to their employees, the country's not doing well. When Congress for the last 13 years and maybe even longer thinks it's okay that millions of Americans are uninsured or underinsured and do nothing to change it, there's something morally wrong there. When we have a president right now who said that if a Medicare for All bill reached his desk, even with bipartisan support, he would veto it, is the same guy who vehemently spoke in the 90s about how he believes balancing the budget should include making cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, programs that I need to survive not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times. There's a quote. There's a quote by Maya Angelou. When people show you who they are, believe them. Now, I spoke about Social Security disability, and I know this is Medicare for all, but disability is tied because I'm on disability, and so I get to have Medicare. But what you don't know, and what was actually touched upon, and I want to thank you for that, there are income restrictions when it comes to disability and Medicaid and Medicare. It goes up every year, but I am only allowed to work 25 hours a week, and that is within their requirements, so to speak. But as wages go up, as my wage goes up, my income obviously goes up, but you can't live on even their requirements, which is like $1,300. Where are you gonna find an apartment for $1,300 in New Hampshire? There's nothing in New Hampshire right now. I don't know if any of you knew that. I've done research, there's nothing in New Hampshire. So the reason that I supported Bernie Sanders in 2016, not only 2016 but 2020, is because for me it's literally life and death, because my parents are in their 60s and I don't know how much longer they're gonna live, and I don't know what I'm gonna do when they're gone, because there's nowhere for me to live. Like, am I gonna move like 800 miles south where rent is $525 but taxes on everything else has gone up? We need a massive shift in the way we do things in America. It's not just healthcare, it's the entire welfare system. Now more than ever, we need people to get in the streets, not just today, but every day. We need people to make phone calls to Congress and the White House. We need people to demand that the people that they elected to represent them fully understand why Medicare for all is so important. Each one of your stories matters, and they need to hear it. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't really know what to say. If you don't get emotional hearing these stories today, if you don't feel outraged by hearing these stories, then I don't know what to tell you. I have to thank you for calling out Maggie Hassan. I think that's extremely important. I think that gets lost in the conversation too much. How it's not, Republicans are so overtly gross, so overtly evil and disgusting that the Democratic leadership, the for-profit industry like Anthem, which made $29 billion last year, they get to hide undercover and support the system just as the Republicans are, while not being as overtly evil. That needs to end. Maggie Hassan knows exactly why Medicare for all is important. She knows exactly why healthcare needs to be a right for everyone in this country. She is actively choosing not to support it, actively choosing not to advocate for people like Maria, people like the stories we've heard today, people like everywhere in this country, including New Hampshire, including Jeanne Shaheen, including both of our congresspeople. We have people in the State House actively trying to get them to change their minds. Where are they? Where's the communication with the office? Where is it happening? It's not happening. They are getting money from the for-profit healthcare industry. They're getting money from all other types of industries that are keeping them from making this a working class-centric government, which is focused on ensuring everybody has the right to live a life of happiness, justice, and liberty in the greatest country on the face of on the earth. That's just what it is. It's morally outrageous what's going on, and it needs to stop. Not 10 years from now, not 15 years from now. Right now, it needs to end. Healthcare needs to be guaranteed in this country for the people who don't have it, because they're being killed by the people in power right now. We're about to go march on Anthem right now, which again made $29 billion in profit off of the backs of the deaths of people, off of the backs of the sicknesses of people. Take a sign. We need 2 people to hold a larger sign if you want to.
I think we got the 2.
Okay, we got the 2 people, but take a sign if you want to sign, and take some water. Most definitely take some water. Thank you, Ken. Most definitely take some water, and be as loud as possible. This system needs to stop. The time is now. Enough is enough.
Yeah! Let's march!
What do we need? Medicare for all. When?
Now!
What do we need?
Medicare for all!
When?
Now!
What do we need?
Medicare for all!
Let's push. Let's make sure that we tell them what do we need right now. Medicare for all, guys. Let's go.
What do we want? Medicare for all! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Medicare for all! When do we want it? Now! Hey, Anthem, you can't hide!
We can see your greedy side!
You can see your greedy side! Hey, Anthem, you can't hide! We can see your greedy side! We can see your greedy side! Hey, Anthem, you can't hide! Hey, Anthem, you can't hide! We can see your greedy side! We can see your greedy side! What do we want? Medicare for all! When do we want it? Now! Hey, Anthem, you can't hide! Hey, Anthem, you can't hide! We can see your greedy side! We can see your greedy side! What do we want? Medicare for all! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Medicare for all! When do we want it? Now! Healthcare is a human right! 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 Hey, Anthem, you can't hide! You can't hide! We can see your greedy side! We can see your greedy side!
years to anyone who would listen to me about my family's health insurance nightmares and the importance of Medicare for all. Guess who gets to hear my story next? 2 of my 3 children are autistic and have for the past 10 years needed various occupational and speech therapies. These therapies help them learn and advocate for themselves and to work on any needed skills. If we were without health insurance, just one session could start at $300. My children are twins and my husband is a public college community college teacher. That math hurts my head. My husband works in Massachusetts, where the insurance coverage for autism-related services are more broad than here in New Hampshire. Because of his work commute, I am sole caretaker Monday through Friday for our children, and have only just recently been able to return to work part-time from home. Long story short, my husband is working for health insurance coverage for our children that has to be supplemented with children's Medicaid because even good insurance has a limit on care. We have to prove every 6 months to the insurance folks that our twins are still autistic. Every year, I have to relive some of the hardest parts of their lives to prove that they are worthy of supplemental insurance. These tasks not only take weeks, but they also have no guarantee that my twins will qualify for extra health insurance. This is absurd and terrifying. My family has made this all work. My kids' needs are not so significant that they require complex medical intervention, but the toll that our insurance has taken on my mental health is pretty significant, and that means more insurance battles. So yeah, it's time for Medicare for all. Everybody on and no one off. Next, I'm going to call up Nicole Klein-Knight. She is a state representative in Manchester.
Thanks, Marcella. Marcella lives in my district. I'm really spoiled. I have the best people in my district. The last speaker before we left spoke a little bit about mental health, and I want to touch base on that because we talked a lot about physical disabilities when you get older and how our country is centralized around profiting off of death. They wait until you have something to cure so that you can give them their money. I think that's wrong. We need to look at preventative, and one of the biggest things we can do is fund our mental health systems. We live with the majority of the population in poverty, and we tell them that they have to be below a certain income to afford healthcare services. So we're basically keeping people in poverty, and being as that is, they can't afford to pay out-of-pocket expenses. And one of the biggest healthcare ailments of being in poverty is suffering from a mental health issue. So you have to choose. Do you pay out of pocket for a service of talking to a professional or getting medicine where you could go to a psychologist and they spend 15 minutes with you and you have to pay out of pocket several $100s just to get your medication that makes you functional so you can go to your waitressing job so you can stay in poverty? Does that make any sense to anybody here? No. Not at all. So we live in a world where we're caught in aha moments constantly, and we live in a world where we're taught to accept our hopelessness. And I don't accept hopelessness. I don't know about you, but it's time that we have a different system that works for all people. We're not stupid, you know? So I'd like to pass the torch to anybody else that wants to speak, but I just want to say mental health is just the same, it's just as important as any other kind of health care, and we can't enjoy our physical health without taking care of our mental health as well.
So the floor is open. If you'd like to share your story, please come up. And
So, as a state representative from Milford, I have the privilege to listen, not the privilege, but the pain to hear the stories of the people in my community and the communities around Milford about mental health. Mental health is affecting teenagers, it's affecting our youth communities. How many lives that we lost in the pandemic started? How many parents that I have to listen crying because they don't know how they can afford it to get mental health. And many of them, they have to drive to Massachusetts just to get mental health. Seriously, it's time for our governor, it's time for our senators, it's time for the government to work for the people in New Hampshire, especially when we're talking about mental health. Mental health is taking lives away from our community. Parents are suffering so much right now. It's time for us to call it for what it is and don't be afraid. As a state representative, I've been told many times that I need to be careful how I say things, seriously, how I do things, because I'm a state representative. I need to be careful. But I have to remind myself that I'm a state representative to represent the people in New Hampshire. I'm here to represent the needs of the people in New Hampshire. I'm not here to represent the corporation and healthcare companies.
Accessing that healthcare is part of the expense that we have not really touched on today. And I think the mobile crisis units need to get a little bit of a nod today if we're going to talk about mental health care. And just access to general health. So we have
I work for care.
Push that and make sure we're not forgetting our own folks.
Hey, what's up? This is Steve. A lot of you know who I am. I'm just a guy who's interested. I just want to say, this whole thing was beautiful. I love the marching. I love the speeches. I can't even give any individual highlights because they were all great. And I love seeing the Bernie stuff because I work for Bernie. Yeah. I wanted to wear that little black college for all, Medicare for all, jobs for all, justice for all, but the one they gave me was small. It's a campaign small, and we got some really small people on those campaigns, so I couldn't wear mine today, even though I've been working out from the Rona weight. But I just wanted to say that this whole thing was really beautiful because I, like many other people, feel politically homeless in this moment right now. Yeah. And it's like, at the beginnings of people who weren't even supported by the Dems for this event, weren't even supported by Big Progressive for this event, because a lot of them couldn't be asked to even tweet out support for an event like Medicare for all, because I see the Jimmy Dore vests in the crowd. I see all sorts of other little things, and I just think it's really beautiful what we've done here today. And it's me, it's you. You know what I mean? I'm going to pass it to someone who's got a lot more to say than I do. She's right there.
Hi everyone. I have a soft voice, so I don't know if you can hear me. No, that's intimidating. I just wanted to echo and share. I think that this is really fantastic. And we've been speaking a lot about how just how many people are affected by our healthcare system. And since we're invited to share stories, I thought I'd share mine. Growing up, I grew up in a pretty solidly middle-class family. My young childhood was pretty stable until my father, at the age of 36, was diagnosed with dilated cardiomyopathy, which is a condition where the heart is enlarged. And that kind of began a 12-year saga of engaging in very necessary medical care. Even though our family had health insurance, it absolutely devastated us financially. We went pretty precipitously, became, just really struggled a lot, to the point where we ultimately had to file for foreclosure because his health insurance would not cover all costs. He ultimately died at the young age of 48. My mom has had to file for bankruptcy as a result, and is still really picking up the pieces as a result of all of that. So even for people who think that, if you have health insurance today and you think you're safe, you think you're covered, you think this doesn't touch you, life happens. Medical problems can happen to any one of us. You can be healthy today and sick tomorrow. And so really we need a system that covers every one of us. Thank you.
So my situation wasn't as drastic, but I feel like for a long time I've been, I guess, privileged with my medical access, because I was on Medicaid up until I moved out of my family home in March. And I didn't realize that moving out of the house meant that I would lose my Medicaid. It's still confusing to this day. But before I found out that I was no longer insured, I went for an appointment, a very simple appointment. And 3 weeks later, I got a bill for $300. Just for that appointment. And I thought that was it. And I didn't know how I could pay for it. But I got help from the community to pay for that bill. And then, like, a week or two later, I got another bill, which was almost $1,000, just for that simple appointment. And I didn't realize how bad the situation was in America until it actually happened to me, just for a simple appointment. And because of that, I have to cover that cost out of pocket, and I did get help again, but there are many people who don't even have that kind of support from the community. And a lot of people are actually ignorant, like I was, to the whole health insurance situation in America. And I just want people to think twice when they're talking about that topic. If you haven't really experienced these hardships, don't just assume that it's easy for people to get Medicare, or that it's not as expensive as it actually is. And just don't be ignorant to it. Do your research. Talk to the people who are actually affected, because there is a reason why we all want universal health care.
Thank you, everybody. We are going to wrap things up now and head back up to the park. And I just wanted to do a couple of announcements. We have some dates to remember coming up on August 4th from 6:30 to 7:30 online. Join us for the launch of our Be a Hero campaign with Addie Barkin. And also on August 18th at 5 p.m. you can join the Rights and Democracy Healthcare Justice team. And we're holding a listening session. If you'd like to tell your story, we can get things written down. And you can also learn how to get involved. And I guess we're going to wrap it up now. Yeah.
on the way back, but let's leave our message up on the wall. Thank you so much for coming, everyone.
Thank you to everyone that came out today. We don't want to stop without saying anything. Hands up, you can hide. We can see your greedy side. We can see your greedy side. Hands up, you can hide. Hands up, you can hide. We can see your greedy side. We can see your greedy side. Hands up, you can hide. Hands up, you can hide. We can see your greedy side. We can see your greedy side. What do we want? Medicare for all. Now.